Grab a mic here. We're going to call, whoa, this one works. We're going to call an audible here. We're going to have Mr. Larry Potter lead the candidate forum. So thank you, sir.
Absolutely. We're now going to bring up our candidates for the nomination for governor of the great state of Maryland, our state of Maryland. Am I allowed to point out that there are actually more candidates, but they're not here? All right, so I have rules here. So I'm not used to I ask these guys questions all the time, and I can just like ask them stupid things, like why can't the Wizards make the playoffs? And I know Robin has an opinion on that, but I actually have to follow these rules, right? This is a convention thing. All right, and I'm reading all of this?
Yeah.
All right. All right, we have ground rules for the candidates here. No campaigning inside the room. Do I have to read all the ground rules too? All right. No campaigning inside the room. Cut it out, you two. Take that tie off, Ficker. Only campaign at designated areas. There are places to put your palm cards at the tables outside the room. Each candidate will give a 2-minute introduction to his or her campaign. We have about an hour for questions. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to each question. The moderator will change the order of each question. There's going to be a designated timer. She's going to raise a 30-second warning card, flag, and a stop sign, red flag, which means time is over. Candidates are not permitted to interrupt another candidate's time or speak out when it is not his or his turn. How's the hair, by the way? Down the hair thing, Robin. You're already behind the 8 ball here. Each candidate will give a 2-minute conclusion response. All right. There, take that, Chris Wallace. Anyone can do it. All right, you all have rules now. All right, stop the laughing. I gotta get serious. Ground rules for audience. No interruptions during the forum. If there are outbursts and interruptions, these people may be asked to leave the forum. Will you take care of that for us? Because you're military.
We'll get them off the table.
No clapping until the very end of the forum. All right. Everybody good? Candidates, are we ready? All right. So they start with their 2-minute opening remarks. Is there an order that we've already picked? Or alphabetically? Cox.
Well, good morning. It's great to be back in God's country here in Montgomery County, where you are truly the ground troops of freedom for Maryland. You do so much with so little Republican representation here, and yet you inspire all of us. I'm a state delegate in Frederick, as you know. It's a great honor that I am privileged to take the stage right after Mercedes did that wonderful speech, because I just had the privilege of coming back from receiving, after 4 years in a row of the conservative CPAC rating as a legislator from her father, I think she said, from Matt, and privileged to have an over 90% conservative rating with CPAC. And I tell you, freedom is in the balance. And that's what you heard her talk about. And I was so privileged when President Trump called me on my phone and said, Dan, the country's at stake. I'm endorsing you to be the next governor of Maryland because we've got to fly the freedom flag. And that's why I'm ready. I have a question for you. Several questions. Do you want someone who's ready to restore freedom, to make sure that our parents are defended? I'm a husband, father, 25 years my wife sends her love, 10 children together. We believe in freedom. We believe in our children. We have stood up for the Maryland Bill of Rights Act that I put in. We had 50,000 parents that supported that bill in committee. We stood for that. We stood against the mandates. Or do you want somebody who doesn't show up to debates? Because that's what you're faced with. Do you want somebody to stand up and fight for you in the debates to make sure that we have a broad policy of freedom that's attractive across party lines? This is resonating in the hearts of Americans and Marylanders all over. When I'm in Prince George's, when I'm in Baltimore City, they want freedom. In fact, one Baltimore City lady said, just make sure you're not a rhino and I'll vote for you. I look forward to this discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Please excuse Dan's youth and inexperience. Montgomery County has never elected a Montgomery County resident as governor. This is your first opportunity to do so. We don't want an absentee landlord. We want someone who lives here and who's lived here for a very long time. I've placed 25 ballot issues on the ballot in Montgomery County. They have received 2,537,403 votes. In this election, Craig Rice, Nancy Navarro, and Hans Reimer can't run for re-election to the council because we passed term limits. We got those 3 tax increase specialists out of here. In the last election, 5 of them could not run. In 2008, I put a question on the ballot to require a unanimous vote of the county council, all 9 members, to increase property tax revenue more than the rate of inflation. It passed despite the opposition of every elected Montgomery County official. As a result, there were no big property tax increases more than the rate of inflation for 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All those years, almost a decade. Then in 2016, they voted for a 9% increase. Well, I was ready for them. We had term limits on and kicked 5 of them out of office. You need a Montgomery County boy or man or person in the governorship so that Montgomery County, instead of receiving 14% of the state school construction funds, will get 21% that they deserve because of the population. Thank you very much.
I feel like an idiot saying this, but you're not supposed to clap. We are all happy about term limits, though, let's face it. So you're excused for that one, you're human. All right, we are going to now, I guess it's pretty easy to just switch up these questions. We'll just change the order each time, all right? So we'll start with you, Mr. Ficker. We turn to our first topic, which is economy and jobs. The question is, what would you do as governor to grow and retain businesses?
Well, you know, I've got a plan for that. You must have just gotten my mailing. If you didn't get it yesterday or today, you'll get it Monday. It's relating to our jobs strike force. Anytime a huge company in the United States announces that they're looking for, or sends it out underneath the table, that they're looking for a multi-billion-dollar expansion, our job strike force is going to be in the air within 1 hour to go out to that company and try to convince them to bring these well-paying jobs back to Maryland. As a lure, my campaign wants to cut the state sales tax 2 cents for $780 a year per household, making it the first state ever to cut the sales tax. All the big companies have shunned Maryland because our Maryland Department of Commerce has been fast asleep and completely passive. Amazon, Apple, Facebook, Global Foundries, Google, Intel, Microsoft, Nucor Steel, Samsung, Taiwan Semiconductor, Texas Instruments, Toyota have all decided to build multi-billion, not million, not like the little $70 million plant in Hagerstown to build subway cars, multi-billion-dollar projects in the United States, and not one has come to Maryland. Google is spending $9.5 billion on capital projects in 2022. Not $1 in Maryland, although Sergey Brin, one of its co-founders, graduated from UMD. We're going to get a turnover in the Maryland Department of Commerce. We're going to have a job strike force, and we're going to bring some big employers back to Maryland. That's our #1 goal.
I agree, and we're going to do three things. First of all, we're never going to deem any business or person non-essential. This state is going to respect small businesses, and sadly for the last 2 years we've had over 50% of our businesses at times locked down, prevented, and you know what happened? 2,005% increase in unemployment. While they couldn't answer the phones on a $30 million phone budget. That's outrageous. I'm going to make sure that never happens. You are essential at all times. We're going to build that up. Secondly, we are going to make sure the budget reflects that. $61 billion budget, one of the most powerful budgets in America, with the governor having the most powerful pen of all governors in America. And yet, sadly, instead of making sure our businesses have the money returned to you with lowering your tax, with lowering the spending coming back into your pockets, instead we have a $4 billion welfare budget, $1 billion increase this year that I had to vote upon in the budget for the welfare programs that include the catch and release of illegal aliens as part of 3 states right here in Maryland. Right in your community. Unvetted, illegal entry persons being paid for by your tax dollars and your businesses. What do? They open, many times, they came here illegally, they open businesses illegally to compete with you. Thirdly, we're going to make sure we push to make this the best tax-free state in America, like Florida. When you look at our corporate rate, we can't compete with Virginia. We're at 8.06, right? We need to push that way down for our corporate taxes. We need to eliminate income taxes. I would love to eliminate income taxes like Florida. There are 9 states with 0 income tax. We can't compete when people are moving out for that. And then lastly, we need to make sure that we make our seniors and our property taxes lower by lowering those assessments. So we're going to have a comprehensive policy and make sure that we show up for our businesses. And Maryland will once again be a place where businesses want to come here.
No, there are no rebuttals or replies. You're just each responding to each question. Is that correct, if I understand the rules? All right. We're now moving on to the all-important issue of education. We'll start with you, Delegate Cox. What is your position on the recent Board of Education guidelines on gender identity being taught to kindergartners?
It's an outrage. I have the sincere privilege of being one of 3 people that I'm aware of in the nation to be identified on national television by my own governor as crazy and absurd. President Trump, DeSantis, and myself. And it was during the week of my Maryland Parental Rights Act being heard in committee with 50,000 Maryland parents supporting it, that my governor, who's picked a successor to run against me, who decided not to appear today, came on and trashed the DeSantis model in Florida. That's not trashing DeSantis, that's not trashing me, that's trashing parents and our own children to expose them, listen to this, pre-K through 3rd, gender expression training. Not just handling questions, how do you handle a question? No, this is identifying the issues for young people who believe in Santa Claus, who believe in the Easter Bunny, to tell them that they don't have to be a boy or a girl. And then when you couple that with the bill that I fought on the floor, don't listen to anything, don't believe anything in the fake news, right? I strongly agree with that with Larry. And, the issues when you hear the 12-year-old and up being able to, under Maryland law now, receive mental health counseling to transfer their gender behind their parents' backs. I fought that on the House floor. I exposed it and all hell broke loose against me. But I stood for you. I'm going to fight that. We're going to change it by saying, guess what? We're going to put more money in the budget for school choice. So the money follows the child, the parents make the decision, and like Florida, we have competition that raises all our schools up. So no more are we going to have Baltimore City having $2 billion going in and having a 1% return rate on the education. That's an outrage. We're going to change that. We're going to make sure that we empower our parents.
If you want to know my position on this issue, just look at my last mailing to you where Governor McMaster of South Carolina took this picture of my friend Governor Youngkin of Virginia and myself. My position is pretty much like Youngkin too. So that's where I stand on these issues. He sets a very good example in that regard. As far as education is concerned, I remember it was the third Open Maryland rally in 2020, and it was in Annapolis, and I was the only speaker there who called for opening the schools in September of 2020. We flattened the curve, and the schools should have been opened. But 2 years later, they weren't. And Maryland became the state with the smallest percentage of students in actual physical, real, non-virtual learning. Of all the states, it was last. Little kids weren't transmitting the disease. They weren't picking it up. We should have opened up the Montgomery County schools so that parents who have 4 or 5 kids, or even 10, wouldn't come home and have 4 or 5 or 10 packets of work to go over with their child after they'd worked all day. Or a single mother wouldn't have to choose between staying home with her kids or going to work and trying to earn a living. So the schools should have been open. Montgomery County, which was trying to close the achievement gap, they widened the achievement gap by being as closed as they were, and I would never have had these mandates that existed in our state. Open the schools. I want to have a reading contest in every class in the state so that the kid who reads the most books in the year gets a governor's award.
I should also let you know, I was going to say, we have 2 more questions on education. I think when we hit each topic, I'll let you know how many questions we have in case you want to make other points within that subject matter. And our topics today, just to give you a quick review, we will be touching also on illegal immigration, safety, transportation, mandates, and then bonus round wild card.
Whoa.
Our second question will begin with you, Mr. Ficker. What is your position on parental rights? And in anticipation of your response, if you do support parental rights, what will you do as governor to actually support the position?
I'm very much in favor of parental rights. Parents should be able to have a tremendous input into what the kids are learning, whether or not there should be any mandates, and whether or not the kids are safe in the school. This is their most precious possession. I have 3 children. My daughter has 3 children. It's your most precious possession. If you're not looking out for your kids, quite frankly, you're not a good parent, let's put it that way. And Montgomery County has shunted aside the parents' viewpoint. It's very difficult to get elected to the school board because you all have to run county-wide, and you're facing the teachers' union, which puts out that sample ballot. We really need some good parental people on the school board, which is going to be difficult to do in Montgomery County based on the history of the last 50 years. I'm going to appoint people to the State Board of Education, however, who are very much in favor of parental rights, like Lori from the Chevy Chase Women's Republican Club, some people who look out for parents, people who are parents. That's one thing the governor can do, is put people on the State Board of Education. Local control is very important, but it's not paramount when they go way off the rails like we have done here in Montgomery County. Kids are important. I'm a bibliophile. My dad worked in the Library of Congress for 40 years. He used to bring me home 6 books a week, and I'm going to promote reading in every classroom, extra reading every day, and that'll make the parents, talk about parents' rights, that's going to make the parents very happy, because I guarantee you that the kid that reads the most books in a year in a class is going to at least get a partial scholarship at the end of his school tenure, because readers move up.
Parental rights is the bulwark against communist takeover of your children's minds.
Yes.
And the way we handle this in Maryland, a place where there are many entrenched progressives in the education system, is I think twofold. And the way we can handle this as Republicans is at least twofold. Number one, we must empower parents under the Constitution with the rights that they possess under the 14th Amendment to unilaterally opt their children out, to tell the people that are in charge of their child's education at the Board of Ed or at the schools that they don't have a say if the parents say so. That's what's at stake right now. That's the law. And yet, parents are being lied to. That was my Bill of Rights. That was my Maryland Parental Bill of Rights, among other things in there, was a very specific command that says you may not trample on a parent's rights. They have unilateral and absolute authority to receive notice of what's going on, of everything being taught, not just generalized notice, specifics of the curriculum, number one, and the power to tell the student, the teacher, you're not teaching that to my student. Secondly, we do need to empower local boards of education and make sure we return the power to the parents. There's an article in Maryland Matters, progressive leftist magazine, online magazine, this week, that's calling for the removal of local boards of education, among other things. Because they believe that that is the, and they flat out say in the article that parents shouldn't have that kind of authority. That's an outrage because that's the path to totalitarianism, to autocracy. And the way we defeat it is we always empower. I'm a parent American. And by God, we're going to remain Americans with parents in charge of our own children.
Thank you. And Delegate Cox will finish up education with this question to you. What are your thoughts on the Kerwin bill and how it will affect Marylanders, and what would you change, if anything?
Well, first, one of the sad things, we fought that very hard. It's good to see some of my fellow delegates. We fought that thing tooth and nail. We did clean it up a little bit. At the end of the day, it created a super board. Now, one of the things on the floor, if you look back at the debate, you'll find out that that I did a little speech on the floor, and some of my fellow Republicans, we all joined together to oppose this, because the Kerwin blueprint created an empowered group of unelected staffers to withhold money from local boards of education. Not the actual appointed super board, but staffers for the super board. We won, we stripped that out. But the super board itself is a problem. But the governor has incredible power to influence that board and to appoint people as part of that team and to make sure that those people protect our freedoms and protect the local boards of education. And the State Board of Education is appointed by the governor. Listen, you know who masked our children for 5, 6, 7 hours a day for the last 2 years? It was this Board of Education that was appointed by Republicans. That's outrageous. This is on our watch. I'm not going to have somebody who believes in that on that Board of Education. We're going to change that. And with Kerwin, the implementation of Kerwin, we're going to make sure that anything that's unconstitutional, we're going to have an Office of Constitutional Law with the governor's office, and we are going to challenge everything in court that takes away from the power of the parents and make sure that we restore our freedoms in that regard too. Because this is look, the Kerwin board is a way to change history with your children. And we've got to confront it head on, and I'm the only one doing that, so I ask for support.
Well, the interesting thing about Kerwin is that they don't tell you how they're going to pay for this very expensive program, which will start costing like $4 billion a year. They don't tell you that. I mean, when have we ever passed, I've been around Montgomery County quite a long time. I used to deliver the Washington Post, so I'd read the papers. When have we ever passed a multi-billion-dollar program at the state level without telling you how we're going to pay for it? That's totally irresponsible. So my plan to raise the state, to lower the state sales tax by 2 cents or $780 per year per household will take away some of that money that's available for them to play with and to finance this over project is how I term it. It's a seizure of control, but they're doing it in a state that is not business friendly, which ranks near the bottom in being business friendly of all the states. So if we bring in some businesses and bring in some jobs, We haven't had any big, large companies move into Maryland. They're moving out like the Discovery Channel. They're not moving in. If we have some big companies come in and are lured in by this tax increase, then maybe we can finance some of the wants of those who want to put more money into education, as many people in Montgomery County do. But we can't have a big program, a big sword of Damocles standing over our head without knowing how we're going to pay for it. I'm going to take some of that money away, and then they're going to have to deal with the money at hand to pay for Kerwin or whatever it is they want to do. I'm very much for parental rights. We'll give that priority. And I know that Montgomery County is education oriented, but I also know they're not tax increase oriented, and Kerwin would force localities to raise property taxes.
Thank you. By the way, I do want to note that, of course, all the candidates were invited to this forum, and Ms. Schultz had a previous engagement, correct? Yes. Let's move on now to illegal immigration. If you haven't been paying attention, under this presidency, Maryland is a border state. There has been an incredible increase in the month of March. Customs and Border Protection reported a 55% increase in fentanyl seizures across the border. Since last December. Number of unaccompanied children in March increased 18% over February's numbers. I have a two-part question for you. How will you work with U.S. senators and congressmen and the federal government to alleviate the border crossings, and will you work to increase statewide cooperation with ICE?
Is it my turn first?
It is, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Well, basically what the Biden administration has done is repeal all the immigration laws. It's meaningless now. You're going to have it sooner or later this year, once they figure out what they're going to do about Article 42, you're going to have 18,000 people a day coming across the border, which is going to be like 5 million a year, which is more than 10,000 for each congressional district in Montgomery County. It's huge numbers we're talking about. So we really need to bring back the Trump era remain in Mexico theory, and which worked quite well. Now, I've participated in 2 rather lengthy meetings, days-long meetings with the Republican Governors Association. And just recently, I believe about 28, including even Governor Hogan, as a matter of fact, I was surprised to see, 28 of the Republican governors issued a position where basically they expressed the fact that we can't have unlimited immigration, and we're getting untold record amounts of fentanyl across the border, which is resulting in the #1 cause of death between people ages 18 to 45 is now fentanyl overdose. So we've got to close the borders. I'll work with all the Republican governors, and it's going to take, well, I assume there'll be at least 30 after this election, and we'll be able to counterbalance the president and work with the majorities in the Senate and the House, and we need to impeach the present director of Biden's director who oversees immigration. We need to impeach the man. He's awful, and he needs to go.
We have thousands of illegal entry persons that came across our border being shipped here. We're one of 3 states doing that right now on our taxpayer dollars. I mentioned this before. I'm going to end that on day 1. The problem that we see with the ICE issue is not a problem at all. I come from a county, as many of you know, Frederick County does the 287G program. It works. I've toured the facility. It's actually a nicer jail facility than our American criminals get. Because they have, not only do they have nicer facilities, but they also have immigration services that we're required by treaty to provide, so we get them in touch with their embassy. And sometimes we find out that they're actually American citizens and they didn't know. That happened one time in Frederick. But we've taken, our sheriff has taken over 1,500 terrorists off the streets of Frederick. Now that makes my girls and my family safe. And that's what I'm going to do in Maryland. I'm going to do this throughout the state. I want to encourage this in the budget. I want to encourage this in how we implement our policing in Maryland. And yes, the progressives are going to, go mad on this issue, but at the end of the day, when you talk to the voters, they don't want people in their communities that are cutting hearts out and cutting heads off. And that's what's being done. They're bringing them in unvetted, and some of them are MS-13, as you know. There was a young lady, sadly, that was dismembered and dumped in my district about 10 miles from my house, brought from South Montgomery County. So that's going to end on my watch, and we're going to make sure that we implement ICE, the cooperation with ICE across the state of Maryland. And then secondly, I'm going to work with our conservative leaders in Congress to make sure this busing stops. And you know what? I'd love to offer a nice little opportunity to have them released over there at Wilmington. I think there's a house that would welcome them in.
Compelled again to admonish you that you're not supposed to applaud or if this behavior continues, you will be removed. You'll be shut into a room and you'll be forced to watch Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's TikTok account. So we're serious about this. All right, gentlemen, moving on to the realm of crime and safety. Some sections of Maryland have seen reductions in serious crime, others have seen increases. As Governor, what will you do to improve public safety? And also, this is just the one question in this realm, so you can hit both of these topics quickly. What will you do to increase or stop the tide of people leaving the police force and to try to increase people to join the police force? We start with you, Delegate Cox.
So I supported the governor including additional monies this year in the budget for policing. The problem is that not only was it, in my view, a token amount, and I understand what he's dealing with in Annapolis, so I'm not digging at him, but when you look at the $1 billion put in for the catch and release program and the welfare program increase, we already had a $1 billion increase last year, and now we did another $1 billion for this, these programs that are actually undermining our safety. We need to equalize that and say, no, we're going to change that dynamic and say we're going to empower our police. I'd like to double their pay. And in my committee, they tried to strip quasi-immunity. I stood with my fellow delegates and we stopped a lot of this crazy defund the police movement in the Judiciary Committee. We've done it all 4 years in a row. It's madness. One of the things they tried to do was use the MPIA, the Maryland Public Information Act request process, to allow criminals who are in jail to file Public Information Act requests and obtain personal information about officers' families. That was in the bill. We stripped that out. We had to fight to get that out. Can you imagine? And at the end of the day, they're attacking the quasi-immunity. Okay? This is a crucial part of our policing. If you can sue police over mere negligence any other day, every criminal in jail is going to sue the officer who arrested them. That's got to stop. We've got to make sure we defend that, and I will make sure that we defend the police. And in that context, I think we need to have, in terms of public safety, we need to have a statewide approach that makes sure that our communities are empowered locally and that we use the power of the governor's office to end the murders in Baltimore City every day. This is madness. I can't take my kids to a ball game because I'm afraid if we come out at 9 o'clock at night that the last ball game I was followed by 6 people. That's got to stop. We've got to make sure our streets are safe again. And that's what I'm going to do as you go. So, thank you.
Well, I treat the police like Officer Friendly, who used to visit my elementary school, Oakview Elementary in Silver Spring. I treat them like I treated him. He's a very friendly guy. He used to come and draw pictures and so on for us. I treat police like heroes and give them priority in the budget and try to encourage them to find a nice home in Maryland. As for the Baltimore crime scene, I've completed over a 48-year period, 40,000 cases in every Maryland court. I know all the tricks that people who break the law use. I've been there, and I'm ahead of them by a couple steps. I think what we do need in Baltimore, we used to have Bethlehem Steel, which was a huge job project. Do you know that you've heard of Intel, right? It's the largest semiconductor chip company in the world. They just built two $20 billion plants. They've approved those plants. One in Ohio, one in Arizona. The largest private investments ever in Ohio and in Arizona. Maryland didn't even compete for that. They're completely passive. If we'd have landed a big project like that and put it outside of Baltimore where Bethlehem Steel was, then some of these guys that are playing with fentanyl and guns, they think, hey, wouldn't I rather earn $60 an hour putting together semiconductors? We need to bring jobs in, and that solves a lot of the poverty and negative attitude and negative behavior. And it hasn't been done in Maryland. We need to bring in jobs, and that's going to be the #1 cure, I believe, for many of our crime problems. In addition to focusing and having adequate drug labs for all the fentanyl cases.
Thank you, Mr. Ficker. And we'll address this one question on transportation directly back at you. How should the budget be allocated to address transportation infrastructure needs? And in addition, how do you plan to alleviate the congestion on the highways here in Montgomery County?
Do I go first?
Yes, you do, sir.
Well, you've seen my signs. It's been, what, 8 years ago or so, I used to have them on 270 about improving I-270. I-270, and especially in the northern reaches, is the same as it was when I was at Montgomery Blair High School. It needs to be improved. We need to have at least 2 reversible lanes. I drive up that way in the morning, and I see how crowded it is coming down, and then it's the reverse in the evening. It takes forever to get out to Western Maryland in the evening. We need to have at least 2 reversible lanes. And I really decry the efforts of the Montgomery County parking magnets, which our office holders are, who don't want to improve the Beltway. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the county executive and council start sending police out to give parking fines to people who are driving on the Beltway and I-270. They're doing absolutely nothing. It takes one little accident to shut down the bridge. We should have improved those roads 20, 30 years ago. And it hasn't been done, and I'm going to be very much in favor of improving both those roads, as I have been for many years, and we're going to have to change some minds in the Montgomery County delegation to do that. In the Montgomery County Council, we'll have to change some minds. So those are the main things I would do. We're putting a lot of money into mass transit as it is. We need to improve our roads because roads give you freedom to travel. You can travel where you want. You can travel when you want. How many of you took mass transit to come here today? Just very, very few of anybody. You all drove here, so we need to have adequate roads because roads are used by at least 90% of the transportation trips in Maryland.
Well, when I sit on the stage with my Democrat opponent who wants to ban cars and make us all go electric and use bicycles by 2050, there's going to be a clear difference, and I'm going to distinguish that for us. We must be a nation that allows free movement, and we need to use all of our energy sources. And we can do it with clean energy, we can do it with resourcefulness. And we need to make sure that our roads are running. I mean, look, we're the best, the brightest, and the most powerful city on the face of the earth, and we can't drive to it. When you're in Southern California, Golden State Highway has 10 lanes each way. When I'm in Florida on I-4, you got 5 or 6 lanes each way. Come back to DC, you got no lanes because your parking is on a 2-laner. That does not mean we have to work with the Montgomery County Socialists to get it done, because in the Constitution, transportation is mandated. Both in the United States and the Maryland Constitution, there's authority given, already there, to make sure that we have the freedom to move about, and no local politicians can stop that. And I think there needs to be a much stronger approach at this. And I don't believe that toll roads are the only way forward, because if that's the truth, if all we have is a parking lot or a $60 payment to go visit our congressman, that's not the constitutional process for moving about. Now, I'm not against all options on the table. I'd like to see utilize the easements that exist right now. There's easements that have been there since I was born. Why are they there? They're there to expand those roads. We need to do it now, and I'm going to do that. And one more thing. I want transparency in the Transportation Trust Fund. Okay, I was told the reason they haven't done it is the Transportation Trust Fund is without money, but yet they won't publish the audit. I want to see that.
All right, Delegate Cox, this next question, one question here on mandates. There's no doubt in the unprecedented 2 years we've just lived through that the difference for many Americans with regard to how they had to deal with the pandemic had to do with who was the governor of their state. Montgomery County specifically was one of the last in the country to open their schools after the pandemic. What have you personally learned from the past, and what will you do differently in the future? We'll start with you, Delegate Cox.
We must restore freedom, or else we don't have a country or a state. We don't have families. We don't have businesses. We've learned this. It's been an outrage. And specifically, Maryland is according to the Wall Street Journal, is in the bottom 10th with California and New York for economic recovery, education, and health for COVID. Now think about that. We were one of the worst and heavy-handed states in the nation. So when you hear, on some of these fake news channels that that's not true, go back and remember. Let's go back to that time. Let's go back to the fact that right now, actually, in Prince George's County, they're still masking children in schools. I think, are they still doing it in Montgomery? I'm not quite sure. Yeah, right now, there's a mandate firing our first responders if they don't get the jab, okay? Now, I'm not against vaccines. I did my dissertation on that in law school. The issue is force. Never before in our country have we ever forced your medical privacy information out in the public to be able to walk around and have a meal, or to go to your job, or to do any of these things that we as Americans have a right to do, because we are Americans. That's right. And I will end the mandates on day one, and I'm going to reverse it. Any official or corporation taking away our medical privacy and freedom, they're the ones that are going to be fined. Come on. Not you and I. Thank you.
Well, I'm opposed to all these mandates, and we should never have implemented them. I do note that the person who is ahead in the Democratic poll, the last one I saw, Mr. Francho, was in favor of having vaccine passports to go to many places in Maryland. And that seems like a very bad idea and a good reason not to vote for him. I am in favor, though, of having some sort of mandate about attending candidate debates. Not because of the candidate, but because I think the voters are entitled to make an informed decision. And it's really putting your finger in the eye of the voter. President Trump, he wasn't afraid to debate. I've attended every debate so far. My opponent, who is not here today, has attended one. And we have a debate tonight in Frostburg. Frostburg is in Allegheny County, which is a desperately poor county. But yet, Nucor Steel is locating a $2.7 billion steel plant, the largest investment ever in West Virginia. That plant should have come to Allegheny or Garrett County. And I would have hoped that our opponent would have been there to defend her passive position. But even though she's in Western Maryland today, she's not going to attend the debate tonight. I asked her last night, she said she didn't even know about it. Well, I believe that you're entitled to see how people react to questions. Being a Republican governor in a Democratic state is not contest living once a day. It's contest living every hour. You're surrounded by all these Democrats, and you have to convince people of both parties to come over to the governor's position and vote for the people.
Thank you, Mr. Ficker. All right, we now have 2 more questions of a wild card nature. The first one will be directed to you, Mr. Ficker. Maryland performs pretty well for quality of life and health care, but the high cost of living and the tax laws make this a less ideal state for retirees on a fixed income. In fact, if I may, because we just did a segment on this last week, Maryland now ranks 50th out of 50 as a destination or a location for retirement. So many retirees are leaving Maryland. As governor, how would you make Maryland a more retiree-friendly state?
Well, you know, the legislature threw a little bit of money in that direction in this past session, but it was interesting how they termed it, the PR move they used. They came up with a figure, but that figure was the tax cut over 4 or 5 years. See, they disguised it. It wasn't just for 1 year. My sales tax cut, which every senior pays every single day, and I'm the only candidate that really is for a tax cut. I have it on all my signs, and if I'm elected governor, when I'm elected governor, I'm going to go down and talk to the president of the state senate and the speaker of the house, and they're going to say, oh, you know, you don't have a mandate. And I'll say, you're right, I don't have a mandate. The people gave you a mandate. The voters gave you a mandate to cut that sales tax. We're going to be the first state ever to cut it. And then we have an 85-mile border with Delaware, which is very friendly to retirees, that had no sales tax. Then we're going to eat away at some of the advantage Delaware has. We're going to give all you seniors a tax cut each and every day by cutting that sales tax instead of throwing a little bit of money in that direction in the legislature. We'll have a mandate to cut that sales tax. I agree, this is not a good place to retire, and that's why I haven't retired.
That's good. There's 2 reasons why we need to make this a priority. Number 1, if you're locking down your businesses and chasing your families out of this state like my opponent did, for the last 2 years, 40,000 people fled our state. Actually, it's more than that now. Where are we as grandparents going to go? We might be tempted to follow them. So that's going to change. We've got to make Maryland a place where we want people to stay. And then secondly, we've got to make sure that our seniors have real tax relief. That tax relief that I voted for, which was negotiated, in my opinion, was a token. It was something, $500 bucks. Okay, up to $1,750. Really? For senior retirement tax relief? That doesn't even keep up with the rate of inflation. And I don't know about you, but my tax bill came in for my house, my property tax bill, at 34% increase this year. Under this assessments, under this Department of Taxation and Assessments. My good friend that works there. Well, he used to be my good friend until I ran for governor. But I'm telling you, I'm going to change that. We have to lower our property taxes or else they're going to go to Florida. They're going to go to Tennessee. They're going to go to Delaware. We have to also make sure that our income taxes are lower. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got to cut the corporate tax rate. We've been in charge now for 8 years. Not once have I seen a corporate tax relief package put in the legislature. Not once. I'm going to fight for our businesses. I'm going to make sure that we have a place where seniors can look back and say, I can keep my house because my taxes aren't going up 30% every year. I'd like to see, and I put a bill in this year to give seniors complete tax credit. And it got a very favorable cross-party review. In fact, if you watch that hearing, I had Democrats supporting it. They took a piece of that and tried to consider it, but then they didn't kill it. They killed that bill this year. But what I found in the campaign trail, this is a winnable issue. No one else is talking about this. And in Prince George's County, the Prince George's County people want property tax relief, and I got a very strong support when I went to that debate. So I'm going to make sure that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Cox, and we will address this question to you. Final question. As governor, how will you publicly support Republicans who are running for office?
I'm trying to do that right now before elected, you know, and I tell you, Larry's doing that for all of us every single day. He gets up so super early to do that, and I appreciate that. And I'm privileged to be one of the first candidates to have Larry's neighbors' support, I've heard.
It's true.
With a sign in his yard. But what I'm doing is I'm traveling the state, all 24 jurisdictions, nearly every day. We try to take family time, you know, Sunday after church and all that if we can. That's the whole goal. We have to make sure we maintain our own sanity, and then we go back out. My wife is behind me, my kids are behind me, and my staff in the 24 jurisdictions we have is on fire for freedom. And what I'm doing is I'm running up a flag that says these are the 5 Contract for Maryland freedom issues. And this is how we're going to win. Because you're not getting that from my opponent. She didn't even show up for one of the biggest counties in Maryland. You all are like number 3 of Republicans in Maryland. How could that be that our leading candidates don't all arrive and talk? That's what I'm doing across this state for all of us, because it's not just about the governor's race. If we pick up 7 to 10 delegate seats and 4 Senate seats, we kill in my committee about 1,000 bills a year. But if we had an extra Republican on our seat, on our committee, oh my gosh, we would kill so many. We wouldn't have this craziness that comes out. And in the Senate, we would uphold these vetoes. It would be beautiful. And that can happen. And that's what I'm working for right now. And then once governor, I'm going to continue that policy approach, because freedom is winning the hearts and minds of people. People are tired of politicians that say one thing and do another. I believe the uniting force of our party is our platform. And I'm the only one that signed on to it. And I believe in it. I believe in our constitutional liberties for you and me. That's a winning thing across the aisles. I believe in making sure that we have economic liberty. That's across the aisle supported. When I talk to business people in Prince George's County, it's amazing. They have the same viewpoints. They might be in a different party, but they believe like we believe in. So I'm going to articulate that, fly that flag, and this fall we're going to win.
I've been trying to help the other Republican candidates around the state. I've been to just about every Republican candidate fundraiser. I see a couple of the congressional candidates here. I've been to just about every one. Just earlier this week, I was at one for Jamie Sterling, who's running for the state's attorney's office in St. Mary's County, and she had unbelievably 650 people at her fundraiser. The reason that the governor wants to have, quite selfishly, I'll admit this, more Republicans in office is that if we have enough Republicans in the legislature to prevent an override of the veto, then we're going to wield more power as a governor. We can veto some of this garbage that is masquerading as legislation. So I'm very much in favor of helping out Republicans, and as a matter of fact, I want to help out you folks. If you will fill out a piece of paper certifying that you were here at this meeting today, and then pass them over to the next Attorney General of Maryland, Jim Shalik, he will then give those to me later on, and we'll get you a nice, free, and very good seat for the inauguration. So I want Jim to be there too, because he's almost a sure bet to win this thing, I believe. And then we'll have some law and order in our state. I want to boost Republicans around the state by going to their functions, and it's amazing. You know, you folks have to get on your toes, because Montgomery County has the third highest number of registered Republicans of all the jurisdictions. And of course, I'm from Montgomery County. My lieutenant governor candidate is from the county with the most Republicans, Baltimore County. But Harford County had the third highest number of voting Republicans ahead of Montgomery County. So step it up, Montgomery County Republicans.
All right, gentlemen, thank you. And your opportunity to applaud is almost there. I know you're just itching to do it. It's almost there. We will now allow each candidate to give a 2-minute conclusion response, and we will go in reverse alphabetical order because we're nothing if not equitable here. That means you, Mr. By the way, really quickly, I know I'm not supposed to do this as a moderator, but as a radio talk show host in this area, I hope Robin Ficker never retires because you give us so much to talk about on a regular basis. No, really, I mean, this is the kind of guy that you love having around, and we do love you, Robin. Thank you so much. And we will start with you, sir.
Well, I am inviting you all down to the governor's mansion for some crab soup. And quite frankly, I would very seriously, if you should entertain the proposition, entertain the idea of having Dan on my cabinet. I think he's very eager to succeed, and we'd like to have people like that in the game. Let's talk about Apple. You've heard of Apple. You all have a phone, okay? Apple just decided to build a $1 billion new campus, paying $188,000 annual salary to 3,000 people, not in Maryland, but in North Carolina. We should have landed that job. There's been a worldwide semiconductor shortage, which caused the U.S. to build 7.7 million fewer cars in 2021 than it should have. But yet Maryland was passive and lying back, sleeping, instead of trying to lure these semiconductor plants to Maryland. Taiwan Semiconductor decided to build a $20 billion plant in Arizona. And I know Governor Doug Ducey of Arizona, he's a good friend, and he's very smart. He was able to cut the taxes in Arizona, give the state employees a raise. Why? Because he was able to locate 2 projects. Taiwan Semiconductor, $12 billion, Intel, $20 billion in his state. And I've met him. He's a very nice person, but I think I'm just as smart as he is, and I'm more of a go-getter than he is. We're gonna bring some big employers in here. Amazon, you know what happened there. We were outmaneuvered. We had a good place right here in Montgomery County to land Amazon, and it's 25,000 jobs averaging 155,000 each. You're gonna have the best governor that Montgomery County has ever had if you vote for me. Thank you.
You're welcome to come to the governor's mansion because Robin will be there helping me. You'll be welcome. You'll be welcome there, Robin. If you want someone who has the backing of the 45th President of the United States to wave the flag of freedom and carry the day this fall, let me tell you something about that. People say, well, how can you win in a blue state? I can tell you how to win. It's called freedom. Yes. You don't win when you join the other side and you become nothing. That's right. Okay, how can you imagine welcoming what we have in the White House right now as my opponent did with her administration? How can you do that when this administration that's in office right now is one of the worst that we've ever seen, causing one of the hardest hits on our wallets? I mean, these are across the line. Remember when we won the governor's mansion and it was an issue regarding the rain tax? Well, right now, people are furious about multiple things. And number one would be the parents' issue with CRT, divisive Marxism being instructed on your children. At the same time, they're doing gender identity reassignment discussions with kids in school, and my opponent said it doesn't exist in our schools. I had to remind her that it was in the COMAR 2 years ago called Equity Lens. I've been fighting it for 2 years. Then we look at the issues before us that are across the aisle. These are across the aisle issues, but issues such as the property tax issue. Where have we had property tax relief? It's not there. I'm going to talk about that. The other side, the Democrats, don't want us to even talk about these, and I guarantee you that if I'm on the stage debating the Democrats, these broadly accepted issues, these issues that resonate in the hearts of people, that fire people up, are going to be talked about. And we're going to have them front and center, and we're going to have a discussion. And I'm going to show up for that discussion. And we're going to talk about the fact that our first responders and our police are being chased out of our state right at this moment. From Jab for Jobs to to the fact that we're undermining their authority and their opportunities to stay here. We're going to reverse that with freedom. We're going to reverse it with hope. And we're going to make sure that we make Maryland safe and great again. And I'm asking for your vote. CopsForFreedom.com.
Before you stop, I would like you to harness that excitement and give a big thank you to our tireless timekeeper, Amy, who did a great job. And now that concludes our open candidate forum / sort of debate of our Republican candidates for governor. So please, let's hear a spontaneous eruption.